표현 영어로 it's a shame. So of course you can say it's a shame. You can also say that's a shame, right? That's a shame. It's a shame. Okay, so for example, we talked about my example that I gave here was 우리 회식 자리 나왔는데 한 명 먼저 집에 들어가야 된다고 했어요. 내가 아쉽잖아. 더 늦까지 밤새서 놀고 싶었어요. 그럼 I could say, oh, that's a shame. Okay, 그것만으로 충분해요. You could just say, oh, that's too bad. That's too bad 하고 똑같은 말이죠. You could say, oh, that's too bad, or you could say, it's a shame. Okay, so if you think about it, that's too bad is exactly like Korean, like 너무 안 됐다, right? That's too bad. Okay, so you could say that's too bad, or oh, what a shame. 이것도 말 있어요. Oh, what a shame. 근데 여기 같은 경우 이거 감탄사 같은 역할 하는 거죠. Okay, so oh, what a shame. That's too bad.
그럼 아쉬웠다 이렇게 쓰려면 there was a shame of
That was a shame. Yeah, it was a shame. 과거형으로. So for example, 우리 파티에 그 사람 먼저 가야 했다는 거, 가야 해서 아쉬웠어요. It was a shame he had to leave the party so soon. 예, 과거형으로도 많이 써요. So for example, it was a shame he had to leave so soon. Okay, it was a shame he had to leave so soon. Okay, 그 사람이 그렇게 일찍 나가야 해서 정말 아쉬웠어요. Okay, alright, so that's pretty easy, but 이거 신청으로 많이 들어왔어요. 아쉽다 영어로 물어보는 사람 그동안 진짜 많이 있었어요. 아깝다? 다음에 가르쳐서 그거는 준비해서 이제 파워 표현 10개 첫 번째였잖아요. 근데 2배 꼭 이렇게 끼울게요. Yeah. Alright, so that's that. And then what else do we need to say? Oh, so let's look at these example sentences, okay? She's going out with that guy. That's a real shame. I was just about to ask her out. So real 앞에 붙이면 그냥 정말 아쉬워요. 정말 안 됐다, right? It's a real shame. 이거 그냥 강조어. It's a real shame. So 무슨 명사 앞에 많이 쓰더라고요. Okay, it's a real shame. It's a real tragedy. Okay, what happened to those people is a real tragedy. So for example, that earthquake in New Zealand is a real tragedy. 그렇게 쓰면 돼. Okay? Alright, so she's going out with that guy. 이것도 한국어로 정말 간단하잖아요. 그냥 사귀다 라는 동사 있어서. 근데 영어에 그거 없잖아요. 이상하게도. 그냥 사귄다는 의미 가지고 있는 동사 하나 없어요. 하나도 없는데 우리 동사로 써요. So 제일 흔히 쓰이는 게 going out with. Okay? She's going out with him 이라고 하면은 일시적으로 그냥 한 번 나간다는 의미 아니에요. 아예 사귀고 있어요. Okay, they're going out. So you can say 이렇게. They are going out. Okay? Say it like that. They are going out. And then 신청할 때, right? 고백할 때. When you're in high school. 그러면 어떻게 말할까? 나랑 사귀어 줄래? 사귈래? 그러면 어떻게 말해야 돼요? Yeah, will you go out with me? Okay, will you go out with me? Would you go out with me? I'd like to go out with you. 그렇게 쓰시면 됩니다. Okay, but like I said here, okay, like in Korean, okay, 내 친구 그 가족분 한 명 돌아가셨어요. 그러면 그럴 경우에 우리 아쉽다 안 쓰듯이 영어에서도 it's a shame이라고 안 써요. 정말 비꼬는 것 같아요. 그렇게 쓰면. Okay. Okay. So in that case, how would you say that? We would say 유감스럽습니다. Exactly. Yeah, we say yeah. I'm sorry. 한국어하고 다르게. Okay. In Korean, it's really strange if your friend's father or brother dies and you said 죄송해요. You said 미안해요. 너무 적합하지 않잖아요. Okay. In English, we say I'm sorry even when it's not my fault. Okay? 제 잘못 아닌데도 우리 I'm sorry 많이 써요. Okay? It means like 동정한다. I feel you. Like I feel your pain 이라고 많이 쓰잖아요. Okay. Alright, let's move on to number 2. So 영어를 구사하다. To have a strong command of the English language. So command이라는 게 원래 명령한다 이라는 의미죠. So he gave me a command. He commanded me. Right? But in this case, it's kind of like Korean. Because the 한자 there is 몰다구 and 불일사. So 좀 한국어랑 비슷한 의미죠. 명령한다. It's 제 마음대로 지배할 수 있다는 의미죠. So he has a strong command of the English language. He has a strong command of Korean. Alright, so let's look at the example sentence. Why don't you read the 사람, 첫 번째 사람?
What other languages can you speak besides Korean?
And why don't you answer? Gaining
a command of complex Asian language like Korean takes at least 10 years. So I pretty much stayed focused on Korean until this point.
Right. Okay, so let's take a look at that. 제가 정말 많이 받는 질문이거든요. And when I used to play instruments, people used to ask me like, what other instruments can you play too? But the truth is, if you want to learn one language well, it takes your whole life. You don't have time for anything else, right? So, you know the 수고, 한국어로 이런 수고 있잖아. 한 우물 봐야지 이라는 거 있잖아요. In English, we have an expression that goes like this. Don't spread yourself too thin. Don't spread yourself too thin. 제가 정말 좋아하는 수고입니다. This is how I feel about a lot of things. Okay, I think you should choose one thing and do it really well, rather than choosing a lot of things and doing it a little bit. So before I started studying Korean, actually I did study a lot of languages. I studied Swedish, and I studied Spanish, and I studied a lot of languages, and I could say like a few words, you know? 인사말, like, you know, 정말 기초적인 거. But then I decided from now on, I'm not going to learn any more languages, I'm just only going to learn Korean. So I say, you know, you can't spread yourself too thin, or don't spread yourself too thin. You know what this comes from? When you spread, let's say you took jelly or something, and if you put like a lot of jelly on one part of the bread, then it's really thick, but the more you spread it out, the thinner it gets, right? That's what this comes from. Don't spread your abilities too thin. Focus on one thing. That's what that means.
So should I put language always?
Should you?
Was like a strong command of the English language.
Exactly. Yep. It's okay. 앞에 the 왔을 경우에 the 뭐뭐뭐뭐 language. Okay, the Korean language. 이거 조금 고급스럽게 말씀하시고 싶으면 이렇게 써. The English language, the Korean language. 이거 없이 그냥 he has a strong command of Korean. 이것도 가능해요. 근데 앞에 the 왔을 경우에 뒤에 language 봐야 돼. Okay. He has a strong command of the Japanese language, of the Korean language. Okay. 한자 정말 잘 아시는 것 같아요. He has a strong command of Chinese characters. 그럴 때는 language 안 붙이죠. Okay. Alright, so I've pretty much stayed focused on Korean until this point. 지금까지, 오늘날까지, 여태까지. And do you remember, maybe I told you about this before, another way to say 여태까지 is so far. 이거 제일 많이 써요, 일상적으로. Okay? 아주 멀다는 뜻 아니죠. 여기 나온 거는 그냥 지금까지. So I've only studied Korean so far. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Why don't you read the, you can be I, you can be Om.
Look, Mom, I made this all on my own.
You did that all by yourself? That's amazing.
Okay, so 여기 나왔듯이 주로 남의 도움이 없이 했다는 걸 강조하고 싶으면 I did it on my own이라고 하시면 되고 동행해준 사람 없이 혼자 갔다는 걸 강조하고 싶으면 alone이라고 쓰시면 돼요. So for example, 나는 친구 없어서 영화관에 혼자서 갔어요. Then you say I went alone. I saw a movie alone. 근데 뭔가 원래 한 사람으로 하기 힘든 거 제가 혼자서 다 했어요. 그러면 그거 자랑하고 싶잖아요. Then you would say I did this all by myself. Okay? Or I did this on my own. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Number 4, regardless of. Let's do, here, we'll move over here, okay? You can be mother, you can be son.
I don't think we can afford to send you on the class trip this year.
Then I just have to make my own money over summer vacation and go regardless.
Okay, good. And if you look at the example sentence in the paragraph up there, okay, 이번 그 수련회 참석 여부는 우리 아버지한테 달려 있다. Okay, whether I'll be able to go on the field trip depends on what my father says. Now, I want to teach you one thing. 이거 원어민들도 잘하는 실수인데, whether or not 이라고 많이 써요. 네, 이거 엄밀하게 따지면 이거 틀린 말입니다. Because whether는 벌써 한지 안 할지 그거 담긴 말이거든요. So or not 이라고 붙일 필요 없어요. So 이중적, 이게 복중적인 표현이죠. So the correct thing is, you'll see I said whether I'll be able to go on the field trip. But what most people would say in America, people would say whether or not I'll be able to go on the field trip depends on what my father says. Okay? And depends on 정말 유용한 표현이죠. Depends on 뭐. So 여기 뒤에 그 변수 그 일 결정되는 그 조건. It depends on what he says. It depends on what she says, right? It depends on the weather. 많이 쓰죠? 내일 우리 그 공원에 가서 소풍 할 건지 안 할지. Well, it depends on the weather, 그죠? Alright, good. Let's move on to the next one.